What's up, y'all? My name is Imad Jabara, and I am here to give you my knowledge on scaling seven-figure and eight-figure companies for free. A little bit about myself. I've worked with companies like Closer.io, where I've helped them build out their B2C and scale it to seven figures. I have worked with clients like Acquisition.com, worked with one of the portfolio clients where I tripled their revenue within 2 weeks. I've also trained closers for people like Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozy, etc. So I'm just here to give as much value as possible. I've gotten a lot of questions on a lot of this stuff, and I realized that I'm constantly answering a lot of these questions that I'm going to be showing you right now. So I said, screw it. Why don't I just make a YouTube channel and basically give all my knowledge out? And then whenever somebody asks me a question, I can just send them the video. So hope you enjoy. What I want to go over today is the client retention system. So basically, this has been one of my most valuable SOPs that I've built out. And it was inspired by one of my old mentors called, his name is Taki Moore. Absolute savage in the space, one of the best coaches in the game. But basically, this is going to take you step by step through every part of the process, depending on what level you are as an entrepreneur. And I think this is a great place to start. So as you see right here, let me just move my face. You have initially the belt level. So basically, depending on the belt is kind of where you stand, obviously kind of like martial arts. White belt is obviously the beginner, is just kind of like where you're just starting off. And then it just goes to black and then gold and then platinum. Something I added in there. But if you look to the left side, the first section is their label. Then after that, it's monthly revenue. Then it's time, question, problem, what they need to stop, systems they need, and what's the strategy what's the strategy they should have. So label, something like wantrepreneur. So initially, when you're starting off, you have $0. You're a wantrepreneur. You have a lot of fantasies. You're dreaming about something to happen. The time that's spent is usually just wasting time. You're just talking about it and not enough action. The question you should ask yourself is, should I and can I do this? This is where the psychological process comes up and you're like really thinking, is this something for me? Can I do this? Have you seen people around you that have had success? Are you having people around you that are doubting you? And the biggest problem is in love with the dream and afraid of the reality. This is basically, you see the Instagram posts, you see the influencers, you see them with money, and in your head, you think, am I good enough to have this life? And this is a question that really kind of lingers for a bit until you decide to take that first step. Things you need to stop fantasizing, take action. Just take the first step. Make that first video, apply for that job, do something that scares you, that takes you to that next level. Systems you need, solve a problem. Then strategy, just create an offer. Anything. And what I mean by anything, just ask people, what are the problems they're experiencing? And you can even look at yourself and problems that you're experiencing, take a step back and see, if you could solve this, do you think this would be valuable for anybody else? Again, the wantrepreneur is just getting the first step. It's a lot of people are on this, and many people never leave this because they're too afraid to take these risks. Then you have the next level, which is the $100 to $1,000 monthly revenue. This is what you call the sidepreneur, where basically they have a side gig. They might have a real job. They have to have a real job if they're making $100 to $1,000 a month. I don't know anywhere that you can survive with that in America. Maybe in other countries, but here, I mean, it's a little tough. But basically, with their time, they're just dabbling with time. The question they're asking themselves is, how do I do this? The problem is lack of good direction and knowledge. Basically, they just don't have the resources. They might have seen a couple YouTube videos, but they might not have the right mentorship, not the right support, and they just kind of have no blueprint or map. What they need to stop is they need to stop using crappy prices and need to get clear on their vision. They might be charging low prices, and I've seen this so many times where you have individuals who basically, like, let's say they want to be a personal trainer. They might charge you $25 an hour, when in reality, they might be a little bit more valuable than that. So now they're basically doubting their own value, and they're charging you what they perceive the market will charge. And this happens to a lot of beginning individuals, specifically because they're stepping out of their comfort zone. They're finally doing that thing they set out to do, and they don't think that anybody is gonna pay for their services. When in reality, all you really need to know is at least, and I saw this in a book once, where it's like, you need to know at least 3% more than the individual you are working with. As long as you know a little bit more than they do, that's all that matters. And it's extremely important to understand that with a little bit of research and a blueprint, You could start a business. Again, it might not be the best business right away, but that's what happens with repetition. The more clients you get, the more experience, and you build your repertoire. And at that point, you can start charging higher prices based on the testimonials you'll get from these clients. For that one, again, what you need is a better marketing strategy, and then choose a lead gen vehicle that makes sense. That could be Instagram, that could be YouTube, something simple just to get you leads through the door. Then you have the 5K a month, which is a solopreneur. This is basically part-time. The question is, how do I stop everything and get more clients? When you're making 5K a month at this point, the business is starting to basically work. All right, you can make a decent living. The momentum is slowly starting to, but what you're realizing now is you're struggling to get leads. You might get enough leads, but not enough to get you over that 5K. So what you need to do is stop trying multiple marketing channels. What I want you to do is initially focus on one. So if that's Instagram and that's where you're getting most of your leads, focus on Instagram and double down on Instagram. What tends to happen is you have so many entrepreneurs trying to find a million things. And again, these systems are based on hundreds of companies that I've worked with, whether it's in tech, whether it's an AI agency, whether it's a sales agency, whether it's a marketing agency, whether it's consulting. Again, obviously this might not apply for every type of business, but for the most part, from what I've seen, this is pretty aligned. And if not, like maybe it's like a little minute difference. But yeah, just really focus on a specific marketing channel and start building a fulfillment system. What does your product do? How does it solve their problems? During this 5K mark, your goal is to validate the offer. And the only way you can validate the offer is by consistently getting people to buy the offer and then also have some decent success. Because once you get decent success, that means your problem is actually your solution is actually solving a problem that is in need in society right now. When you get to the 10K month mark, now you're on orange belt, and this is what you call now the manager. This is now where you're working full-time in your business. The question you got to ask yourself is, how do I speed up growth? You have momentum, people are buying your offer, but now there's lack of clarity and purpose. All right. And what I mean by that is now you got to the first benchmark, which in my opinion is like every beginner entrepreneur, once you get to 10K a month, that's like your first mile. And that's where now you're like, all right, no, I'm a legitimate business owner. I have like a tangible asset. And now you have to get clear on what the long-term vision is. Do you want to keep it at 10K forever, or do you want to take it to that next level? And this is the part where you've made it this far without being organized, maybe without having a CRM, maybe without having a sales system, maybe without having anything. You've just made it on pure luck and the fact that you just created decent marketing that attracts people and it's bringing them in and you're closing them. But if you want to scale, you have to get more organized and you have to now get clear on the specific avatar. Because again, you can BS and still hit 10K a month, which is crazy to think about. But once you're at 10K a month, you want to take it to the next level, you got to get very clear on your marketing and how you are actually bringing people in with your lead gen. And what I mean by that is like your lead magnet. What lead magnet are you using? Who is your avatar? Are you clear on the process? And this is where now you really start focusing on potentially getting a CRM so you can have more organization. Also like follow-ups. The leads that might have not closed 6 months ago now can close because now you have testimonials that will back up your claim to show people that you can actually get results. So it's extremely important at the 10K month to really dial in the lead gen system, but also now focus on follow-up and creating CRM so you can get more organized. Once you're past orange, you get into green. Green is more developer. This is when you're at 30K months. This is now when you're living a pretty decent life. Now you've gotten more confidence. Now you're working overtime. Now you're like really, really dialed into your business. Now the question you ask yourself is now, how do I eliminate mistakes and create consistency? At this point, your offer is validated. If you're making 30K a month, ideally it takes about 20K a month to really validate your offer. But if you're making 30K a month, your offer is validated. The thing now that I see a lot of companies struggling with is lack of systems. You're still disorganized. And now is when you really have to dial in your processes and you have to stop basically pretending like you're how do I say this? You have to build out systems so then you can hire people on so you can delegate specific things. And again, we're not talking about hiring a whole entire team, but now you need to start taking yourself out of specific processes. So the big problem that I see a lot of individuals do is they come into business and they immediately hire a salesperson. What tends to happen is if you hire a salesperson because you're afraid to do sales, they end up having you by the balls. And the reason why I say that is because if they come in and they now build out all your systems, all your scripts, all that information, and you don't know how to do sales, then if they need support, how are you going to support them if you can't even do it yourself? How are you going to do call reviews? How are you going to do role plays? How are you going to help them grow in the role if you haven't done it yourself? Which is why I always say, like, when you're building out your processes, literally write it all down. Use SOPs. Every sales call in the beginning that you were taking, like, record it, transcribe it, break it down, and organize it. Like, this is the person that I got an objection for, like a spouse objection, thinking about an objection. This is where I got somebody that has a financial issue and somebody needs financing. The more recordings and the more specific videos and specific problems you can get recorded where you've dealt with these situations, the easier it is for you to, one, train your team moving forward, but then also train your team in every other aspect of the business. So let's forget about sales. Now let's think about fulfillment. If you're the one fulfilling on the product and you haven't built out systems, then you're kind of screwed, because now it's like everything's in your brain, but it's like, how are you going to teach somebody to take that role? So if you want to focus on sales fully, but now you need somebody to help you with fulfillment, you can't help them because now you haven't built out a system for that. So ideally, you got to go back and then build out a process for them for different parts of the business, whether it's fulfillment, whether it's recruitment, whether it's sales, whether it's just admin work. And basically, it's extremely important to build that when you're at 30K months, because when you get to now the next level, which is purple at 50K month, now you have to start focusing on delegating. When you're at 50K a month, that's when I recommend you bring in potentially a setter or a closer, because now you want your team to start closing for you. You don't want to be the person only closing. Because at this point now, I want you to now really kind of start dialing in fulfillment a little bit more. And the next step and the next question you have to ask yourself is, how do I get my team to think for themselves? All right, where now you're not the only person making it run. Usually at 50K a month, I see a big lack of sales process. And it's your job to now stop taking sales calls and start dialing in that process for yourselves. You have to really build out sales systems. And this is what I was talking about at the 30K month mark, where do the hard work initially. It sucks. I know it sucks, but trust me when I say it will be so beneficial. I had a client a while ago. Basically, they were doing about $670 a month. And what happened was there were two founders that have never sold a day in their life, but they hired a sales manager to come in. He came in, hired 40 people, I think 20 setters and like 20 closers or some number like that. And after a while, he asked for more money. What happened was they didn't want to give him the money because they didn't think it made sense. He got mad, left the company, took his closers, and they went from 670 to literally 72K a month. Like, can you imagine that drop off? That is a massive drop off, only because they put that much responsibility in the sales manager, which long term screwed them, because then as soon as he was gone, they had to rebuild that whole system, but they didn't know how to rebuild it because they weren't focused on that side of the business. And then they had to obviously start all over again from scratch, when they already had clients that either wanted now refunds or were trying to follow the sales manager because the sales manager closed them. So it made it really, really messy. And it's all because they cut corners initially when they should have just learned the process, do the hard things. Don't try to cut corners in your business. I'm telling you, it's going to bite you in the ass. Once you're done with once you're past the 50K mark and you get to the 80K mark, this is now where you're now in the 7-figure range. Now it's really about, their time should be about focusing on coaching and supporting your team and how you can now duplicate the roles. Now it's like, how do you hire? How do you get the right people? And what tends to happen at this point is like wrong team, lack of culture. 80K a month, you start building your team. Maybe you have 5 to 6, 7 people. And it's extremely important to build culture, because the culture you put into these like 5 to 7 people is the standard that you're going to build up for everybody else. And what tends to happen is a lot of people will hire people that made sense at the time in the beginning that might not fit later on. And what tends to happen is you need to now start training leadership. You need to start training EQ skills, because this is going to make more sense when you start making more money, because the 7 people or 5 to 7 people you're hiring all need to know how to work with people, because the more effective you are in training them to be leaders initially, the less work you have to do later on. And it all makes sense once we get to the 250 a month mark. Then you get to the red, the CEO, 100K a month. team. And this is now where the time is team sets your time. So basically, questions you have to ask yourself is, how do I maximize on my time and my highest leverage tasks? And I always, when I go into companies, I always ask, what's your highest leverage task right now? And ideally, you'll get many different responses. But the biggest one I usually get is usually sales, where they basically are the bottleneck because they don't know how to build their sales team, and ends up kind of shooting them in the foot. And it's not really about their sales process. What it's about is the lack of leadership. They're phenomenal at sales, but they can't take their brain and put it into their salespeople. The more effective they are in duplicating their skill set, the faster they'll be able to grow. Because as soon as they can put somebody in sales and they can start crushing on their own without you, then you can obviously make that person a manager, and then they can have closers under them, and then they can do your role and then just check in with you whenever they need to check in with you. And that's ideal, and that's where you want them to be. And that's where your leadership really comes in. And what tends to happen is, at this point, there's a lack of clear expectations and roles for your team. So this is kind of where everybody's like has a million roles. You have people in sales that are also doing a little bit of fulfillment, doing a little bit of setting. Then you have people in like finance that are doing admin plus operations. And it makes sense just because, you're still early on in the game. And at this point now you're getting bigger and bigger. And now you have to start really organizing your team and like really focusing on, all right, your top skill is sales. Your top skill is fulfillment. Your top skill is finance. Your top skill is operation. And now this is your role. This is your job description, and this is your role for the day. And then give everybody clear expectations. And one of the big things I always say is, don't assume that the people you're working with know exactly what you want them to do. I always say, for the first 3 months, micromanage. And you have to micromanage until you can trust them enough to let go of that, that control. And you don't get that until, I would say, 3 months. You might get it a little bit earlier, but still watch them just so you can feel completely comfortable in your decision to actually let them go on their own. In that situation, you need automation systems. This is basically where you get very clear on how to automate processes. And that usually happens in your CRMs. You automate maybe finance, you automate operations. But obviously you have somebody leading the charge and making their life easier, because then they can bring on new hires that will help make the process a lot easier for them and the company as a whole. Once you get to the 250 mark, what tends to also happen is, you'll notice like now it's more like you really leadership focused. Like this is now where you really have to focus on dialing in your team and really getting the most out of them, maximizing on them. But what tends to happen is, whenever you get past the 100K mark, 200K mark, fulfillment always breaks. And especially if you scale very, very fast. Because what tends to happen is your marketing crushes, your sales crush, and then you get an influx of clients that you're not ready to handle. And no matter how hard you try to prepare for it, it's going to happen. Fulfillment's going to break. What might happen is you might get too many clients in 1 month, and then you need more client success managers. But the problem is, you only had that 1 month where you got 500K. And then you go back to the regular flow, which is 200K months. But now you have more client success managers. So what tends to happen is people will overhire and then realize 3 months later it hits their P&L, because now they have extra roles that they didn't really need to hire because they didn't plan ahead. And also they weren't having a consistent steady flow of 500K months. So now they're basically overhired, which then also shoots them in the foot. And also when fulfillment breaks, sometimes like you need to fix better systems, because now you might have not had automations for your systems, which then kind of screws you over because you haven't had automations for your systems. Now, the problem that you're solving is requiring more time. And with the influx of new clients, now you can't focus on all the clients you have. So instead of having 50 clients, now you have 200 clients. Now, do you think you have the capabilities of actually getting to every single one of them at a timely manner? Most likely not. And it's okay. Once that happens, now you can prepare for when that next influx comes in. Like if you're getting 200 clients a month and before you were doing 50, what shifted, what changed, what parts of the fulfillment process can you automate to make your life easier and save you money, and look 3 months ahead. If I hire this person, am I still going to need these 3 CSMs? So it's extremely important. And at this time, also, this is now where you have to really transfer responsibility. And now you have to focus on bringing in the right talent. So like senior managers, senior associates, you want individuals where they're not directors, but they're managing under you. So basically they can report to you like managers of sales, managers of fulfillment, managers of finance. If you're at the level of finance, I don't really think so until like 500K a month to 1 million. But CSMs and sales, definitely. At this point, you're getting a manager, not a director, because now they just have like maybe a team of 4 under them, 3 around that. What tends to happen is like there's a lack of structure and hierarchy. And there's also a lack of client retention process. For me personally, when clients or when companies would hire me, my minimum was you need to be doing at least $250 a month to hire me to come on and help you with your client retention systems, your operations, and your sales. And the reason for that is because 250, you're getting a good amount of clients where then you can build a retention system that makes more sense, that can scale them from 250 to 500. There was a company that I worked with where basically I came in and within 2 weeks, we scaled their revenue. Well, we scaled the company within 2 weeks. And initially their backend was doing about 22K a month, which was not good because the company was doing about 280 a month in total for front end. I came in and I changed their 1,000 offer to a 16,000 offer and changed the whole offer in itself. And within literally 2 weeks, we closed about $59,000 front end and about, I think it was about like, don't quote me on the math, but maybe I think like 80 or 90K revenue. But it's all because of the simple tweak and realizing that the problem they were solving wasn't what the actual clients wanted. So we had to shift the problem to a solution that made more sense, tailored based on their needs. And then we charged more money. So initially we went in there because they wanted to just give them more of the same coaching. But what I did instead is I taught them a new skill. So they came in and I taught them enterprise, like sales or enterprise value, how to sell and buy businesses for the product they already had. It won't make sense now, but basically we changed the offer and it made them a lot of money. But again, that was building out their client retention system. And at that point, they had to basically take specific people out of the role and they had to hire me in because I understood the process and they put me in the right seat. And then from there, I hired the right talent to build the continuation of the products. So I was that recruit that they brought in that then hired more people and built out their system. And sometimes you can have individuals that are great to getting you 100K a month, but they're not great to getting you to 500K a month. And then you get individuals that are great to getting you 500K a month, but they're not great to getting you to $1 million a month. So you have to understand like A players, B players, and C players. Like an A player, like there are specific A players that are for $100,000 a month, and then there are specific A players that are for $1 million a month. The A player for $100,000 a month would be a C player for the $1 million months, and then vice versa. So you got to understand who you're hiring and what seat you're putting them in, which is then going to help them grow and grow the company. Then you get to the 500K a month. And this is now where you start hiring roles like directors, senior directors. This is where now they have managers under them and they're now coming to you. And ideally in this situation, this is where I say, I want this to really focus on branding, like really, really building their brand, getting on podcasts, doing speaking events, getting their face out there. Because at this point now they have managers and they have directors and they have all these individuals already taking care of the company without them, if they've done it the right way. And this is now where you start also scaling without losing the quality of the product. This is where now you're not the one that's really focused on helping the clients win, but now you've instilled all the right values and the right lessons and teachings into your employees to be able to do that. But what tends to happen is because they're not you, the quality of the product is going to start kind of like downgrading. And this is where you really have to dial in the process and really help your clients win. And this is where also fulfillment breaks again, because you might hire some bad talent that might hurt their reputation or might not give the clients the results they want, but that also comes down to your leadership and how you train them. So the biggest things you need to like focus on right now, we need to stop is you need to stop focusing solely on dialing on marketing and sales and focus on dialing fulfillment and retention. This is where fulfillment is extremely important because it might break, and now really focus on how do you make it better. So it's so better enough to be so good that people will stay with you and now allow you to solve the next problem you just created. A good retention process a good retention process is based on a fulfillment product that now creates another problem for you to solve later on. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, you're a dating coach. All right. Your front end product would be learn how to get more dates so you can find somebody. And then your back end would be learn how to now keep them. Just like if you have a marketing agency, A good marketing agency would be how to get more leads. And then the back end would be like how to close those leads. And then the back end after that would be like how to keep those leads and fulfill on them and retain them. You see now how one problem you're solving is now creating a new problem that now you can solve again. So whenever you're building your product, really think about it long term. Don't just think about it from the next 6 months. Think about it for the next year. If I had this person that came into me and I helped them get this specific solution, what more can I do for them to help them get to the next solution? And what problem am I going to create for them that I can also help them win? And this is where the fulfillment and retention system comes in. And then you get to the platinum. The platinum is like the enterprise. This is like $1 million plus a month. And this is where I always suggest, like, everybody looks at Hormozi and they say, oh, Gym Launch sold for $100 million, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, that's the first company I've ever seen, a coaching company that's sold that much. And what people don't realize is Gym Launch wasn't just a coaching company. When he sold it for $100 million, he didn't just sell Gym Launch for $100 million. He sold a supplement company and he sold a software company, all in one, plus the coaching company. So there were so many factors to it that made it extremely valuable. Same thing applies here. When you're at $1 million a month, you really want to think about adding new products. You know, like, what's the new product you're adding? Are you adding a new business to your product? Let's say you're a lead gen agency. Do you add potentially like a sales product, like another course in there that can help them with sales? Do you potentially add a software? Do you buy other businesses? This is where you really have to focus on finances, because at this point, overhead is going to skyrocket, but also you're going to focus on how to dial in marketing so you're not now shooting yourself in the foot. Also, can you buy other companies to, increase the value of your asset? Are you diversifying now your assets within the company? Are you bringing on other things to make your company more valuable? This is now where you're thinking bigger picture. One of the companies I was working with was doing about $8 million a month, and they had 3 products, and each product was doing $1 million a month. And what made it so good was it touched every part of the market. And that's how you should start thinking, because if you're just focused on one product, what's going to happen is a couple of years, one, the market might get saturated, people might copy you. And I think what makes you strong is your ability to consistently innovate. And that can either be buying products or bringing in the right talent to help you create new innovations and basically scale your company. And this right here, this again it's not for every single type of business, but this works for most. And this kind of gives you a clear understanding of the whole entire journey from where you started and potentially where you're going to end. And moving forward, I'm going to make videos like this all the time for different parts of just scaling your company. And genuinely, I just want the best for you guys. And I'm excited to see, one, in the comments, how you guys are growing and how this is benefiting you. And it's also great for client retention, because if you can build a system like this for your product, you can actually show the clients where they're at in the process. And then once it's time to upsell them, you can say, hey, you're at $5K a month. I helped you get to $5K a month. If you pay me another $10,000, $20,000, whatever, I'll help you get $10K a month, and then $30K a month. So in other words, you can even show them this and sell them on the next steps, obviously based on your own product and what makes sense. So I hope that helps. I appreciate you guys. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow. Have a great day and stay amazing.